Maggie and Josh, who, I have a question with respect to the firewood. Who is dealing in the firewood? Is it their nursery or is it Maggie and Josh? We don't know, the 1967 and the 1987 special permit for the nursery said that it went to Oldfield seniors and that their children could share in it. And the 1987 permit says, but it's not assignable. So it means that the children are the operators under the 1987 permit. And the 1987 permit still has force and validity. So we don't want a different operator doing the landscaping from the operator doing the nursery. We want a continuity of operation because or at least we have to know that there isn't a continuity of operation, and if there isn't, that would be a factor probably affecting our final decision. So what can you tell us?
I'm not sure I can answer the question. Maggie can, and one thing that they have done, and I've just received copies today, but I haven't submitted yet, are amended leases to all of the properties, naming Josh and Maggie as tenants along with their nursery corporation. So they individually are tenants of the property, which would match the fact that they are the applicants under the permit, for the permit. And so I have those, and I will submit that through so that the board has time to consider those before the next meeting. I just did get copies today. They're dated April 1st, but I get copies today, and I don't want to flood the board tonight.
Go.
So in 1963, my father bought the land. And then in 1967, he then got a special permit to operate a nursery and landscaping business. At that point in time, the total acreage was 3.5 acres. So at that point in time, according to Milton bylaws, he needed a special permit. So that is why he went and applied and received a special permit for both the nursery and landscaping business. Through good fortune and very hard work, through the years he was able to purchase some additional land. So the first purchase was at 0 Forest Street, which was about an acre, and that's on the back side of the property. And then that was roughly 76. And then in 87, he bought 24 Forest Street. So at that point in time, we then had over 5 acres, which then you do qualify for agricultural status. So we were running our business. My father was still alive in 87. He went in and had the special permit amended. So Josh and I, well, his children were added to the special permit so we could continue on. Josh graduated college in 90. I graduated college in 91. And so then we joined with him. My father had 100% stock in Thayer Nursery. He then gave Josh and I each 24%. So we were all co-owners. My father my parents, my father and mother both owned the property together and rented it to Thayer Nursery. In 2000, my father died. So then my mother received the remaining 52 shares of Thayer Nursery. Thayer Nursery is a corporation that rents from my mother, who is essentially the trustee of the Oldfield Family LLC. Through the years, then we purchased some additional property. First it was 217 Hillside, which was purchased by Josh, myself, and my sister. Then my husband and I purchased 237 Hillside. So then we entered into leases with Thayer Nursery so we could use that land as part of our business.
Leases or lease?
Well, 237 was a lease from me and my husband Phil Lang to Thayer Nursery. And then 217 was from the property owner, my sister, and her husband to Thayer Nursery.
So just to clarify, either you or Josh or your sister or the Oldfield Family Trust are the owners of all of the land
Correct.
that's leased to Thayer? Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
And who is the owner? And is it the ownership of their nursery is you 24%, Josh 24%, and your mother 52%?
It was up until last year when my mother gave the remaining ownership to Josh and I. So Josh and I are now 100% owners of Thayer Nursery.
50-50?
Yep.
Okay. And does Thayer send out the billings
Billings to,
to customers?
correct.
Okay, you don't?
Invoicing, Thayer,
And how long has that been going on?
since
Since the beginning?
1967.
So in other words, it's always been Thayer Nursery?
Correct,
But you are Thayer Nursery, you and Josh?
correct.
And you, your mother, and Josh are Oldfield Family LLC?
My mother is Oldfield Family LLC.
Okay, she has the 100% ownership.
Yes. With my siblings.
So she has less than 100%?
No, she currently has 100%.
And they're just a landowner?
Oldfield LLC is a landowner.
Okay.
And just as, I think what is a little confusion is my mother and I have the same name. So on the original application, where it says owner Oldfield LLC, that is my mother's signature as Margaret T. Oldfield. Under applicant, Maggie and Josh Oldfield. On the second page is mine. So I sign everything Maggie Oldfield. My mother signs everything Margaret T. Oldfield. So there
Okay.
has been no change in name on application. All of the names have been covered since this October 21st document.
All right, I think that's helpful. Now, I think that if we can, shall we allow the revised application to be the application which is currently before us?
With the understanding that we will continue to request.
It's just an application.
Yes. I will say the only thing that would be helpful as we get updated information is the dates always changed on the first page. But if, like me, you're printing them out at home and you get loose pages, it would be helpful to have the date at the bottom of every single page. So when they get mixed up, which they will inevitably do, we know which is
It's a
which.
revised page, it should say revised page with the date.
Exactly.
Emily,
Yeah.
has there been they've moved things around from 2 to 3 and from 3 to 2. Has there been a change in scope?
There has been some additional information. I did not, this is a red line from the last thing that they sent us, but it's not necessarily a red line from the comments that I did. I could provide a board with a red line from the comments that I sent. I'd be happy to provide it to, actually, I can send it to Emily, and Emily, you can distribute it to,
I'd maybe recommend just having Tim as point person.
Tim.
just
Okay,
to-
yeah, of course, I was forgetting. So Tim, I can send it to you, and you can also distribute it to the applicants as well. Yeah, I'll do a red line over the weekend and get it to you as soon as possible. And then that way you can see what my comments were, what the changes were, and everybody's had all the information together. But there are some differences in this from the, so what had happened was Maggie had made some suggestions, suggested changes based on my comments at the last meeting and said, is this consistent with what you were asking for? I made comments through on that and sent them back to her. I also sent them to Alex and Bill so they'd have a copy. I don't know if they distributed it further. I don't think they did. And then the comments that we have today, the red line, are, some of those are based on the comments that I sent and some of that's new. So I
So-
can do a red line and compare
And
it.
I'm-
I have not done a scope comparison.
That's, I think, my concern would be if there is an additional use that's being put into this application, that would be my only concern
Yeah.
about.
The artisan market, which
Which they've
Ben
just
had already
withdrawn.
withdrawn, and the patio furniture is, those two were additional to two. The masonry products, I think, was a breakout from something else
I
that was
agree with
already
that.
in there.
Yeah.
So, which I had requested that under the section 2 definition of landscape business use, that everything be broken out easily. And I'd asked that portions that were narrative be moved to section 1, which is the narrative section. But I haven't gone through line by line to say, this is
Obviously,
different and
neither
this
have I.
isn't. Yes, exactly. You wouldn't be asking the question, so.
Just as a clarification, I do believe the patio furniture, fire pits, and lawn games was in paragraph 3.
Right.
And then it was moved over, because I believe this special permit was really addressing the zoning board of appeals, and the zoning board of appeals issue of cease and desist.
Right, but the zoning doesn't allow us to authorize either of those things. So you could move them back into 3 as a description of what you do,
Yeah.
but it's not something that can be in 2 because we can't authorize that. You'd
Okay.
have to go back to the ZBA and discuss that with
Yeah.
them.
And to the extent that is moved back to 3,
Then 2
then
becomes
2 becomes pretty
effectively,
consistent with.
exactly. The only question would be, and that goes back to the issue of the Christmas trees, is do you want it to, Christmas trees and holiday sales, do you want those to continue to be under the ZBA, or do you want to clean it up and put it under this one, basically? And you're under both at the moment, so that's kind of up to
And
you.
where is firewood?
I really think
Firewood's in
that
2 now.
Where?
Yeah,
2B,
to be under bulk agricultural products.
yeah.
bulk materials.
So the Christmas tree sales, the Milton zoning bylaws never allowed in their bylaws for nurseries to sell Christmas trees.
Okay,
So then, I believe that was written, that bylaw was written and adopted by town meeting in the 70s. And it was because it was so that all nurseries under 5 acres could sell Christmas trees. So, and at that point, we did not have 5 acres.
right.
So we needed the special permit to sell Christmas trees. As I mentioned, through the years, we were able to purchase additional land, and we then qualified for 5 acres or more as agricultural.
Right.
So we think that our Christmas trees are really covered under paragraph 3, under agricultural. And
So,
the Milton bylaws have not kept up with state statute, which reduces the 5 acres to 2 acres. So when you reference the Milton zoning bylaws where it says 5 acres,
Well,
So,
now that you're a town meeting member, you can get article into the,
but, I mean, to that point, this zoning bylaw does allow you to have Christmas tree sales under this.
does.
So, you know, you may want to move it in here so it's clarified and done, but I recognize you have that option, so, but,
So we'll probably just move it to paragraph 3.
well, you may have an option. I mean, you take.
Well, she
your
has the option of
life-
choosing where she wants to put it,
You take your life
yeah.
into your own hands by saying, I don't need a special permit to sell Christmas trees. I'm entitled to do it by law.
then you,
Uh,
I mean,
and
here,
I would say that you are likely to be surprised if that's the position you take, but it is up to you. And if you just say, forget the Christmas trees in the landscaping plan, then there may be a problem.
I mean, I think Alex's point is a good one. You know you are authorized under this zoning bylaw
Yeah.
to be able to sell that. You may want to take that into
Yes,
account.
okay.
Your co-partner wants to be heard.
Yes.
Yes, this is Josh.
But you have to come up and speak into the microphone.
Josh Oldfield, 24 Forest Street. Our concern with putting it under the bylaw is if down the road a permit was to be repealed, for whatever reason, we still have the flexibility to sell Christmas trees on the agricultural side of our business.
Or
Well,
under
You
the zoning.
ain't going to get that from us.
Well, I mean, then you make that argument
Well,
at that
You
time.
make that
Yeah,
argument
exactly.
to the building inspector when he says,
Right.
what are you doing here?
But that's from our perspective, you guys have to understand where we're coming from as well.
We are trying to make the building inspector's life as easy as possible,
By saying it's all out of your
which will
control.
then make everybody's life as easy as
So we
possible.
have to provide for families, and the reason why we're going through this process of giving and taking.
You have to come and speak into the microphone.
Sit over here.
You
Again,
want to,
Josh
you
Oldfield.
want to do what?
Our goal here is to coexist with our neighbors
As peaceful as possible.
as much as possible. And at the end of the day, we've drawn out a line of documents. We've invested a lot of hours, hundreds of hours in time. It's not, we're not here to play chess. The chess game is off. This is about survival. So hopefully you understand that that's the reality of the situation, that the hours worked, even though it's not permanent right now.
We're going to get into
The
hours.
things that we've talked about are just not arbitrary things that haven't been well thought out. And we really want you to understand that for our survivability in a seasonal business, that there is a correlation between a lot of the intertwining of pieces of the puzzle. So that's all I wanted to say. So hopefully you understand that moving forward.
And Christmas trees, again, we believe that we don't really know where it should go for the sake of the town and for the sake of us.
You're
that's the
able to
applicant's
sell
decision.
Christmas trees under your special permit, currently. If you want to dump that, or if you want a permit that basically repeats that, I mean, we're not going to overrule the Board of Appeals.
It's a separate permit, yeah. I
In-
mean,
I
it's
mean,
a completely separate
they've
permit,
issued a
yes.
special permit, we're not going to overrule them. That's not what we're going to do. So, and those permits, you know, on their face are in force, and you may take the position that some of the stuff that they cover is exempt under the statute, but you don't have that appeals court case that says that's the case. And you have an opinion, and I know you have an opinion, but you may not be right.
Right.
So,
But ultimately, it's up to you where you want it to be, so you
Right.
just let us know.
exactly, exactly. But we're going to, if you give it to us, we're not going to overrule the Board of Appeals, and the same is true with other stuff in the permits. So, now I think that we've dealt with the ownership. We're still on whether we're inclined to allow the permit to be revised.
Isn't that something that you more or less indicated earlier, that we should consult with town council on?
I think that we could, but I think in the meantime, why not use the revised permit as the basis of our discussions? Because if he says you've got to have a new application, then,
Then we can
you
take
know,
care of
we're
it.
going to have a new hearing. I personally think that we're probably going to be able to approve this revision.
I will say that they did provide some additional information that the board could find useful at my request. Among them, under the list of, in that section that we're talking about, the list of business activities, they've specified it out with hours and months of the year, which the board may find helpful. They've also, added additional information about what's done under each department that we may find useful. Sort of a bit more of a breakout beyond what I
We don't-
requested, but that's great.
We
It's
don't need
useful
a formal
information.
vote, we need a sense of the board.
Fine.
Okay, we have a sense there, do we have a sense?
We should proceed with the
Under the-
assumption that we're gonna get
We're
legal.
going to
Yeah, I
proceed
think that's fine,
under the
yeah.
revised application until we're told otherwise.
We're presently understanding there'll be revisions to this.
What?
We're understanding as we're going through it, there'll be revisions to this.
Yeah, I mean, there
Relative to
will,
the artisans
but
market.
what we're going to be doing is discussing what's in the revision rather than what's in the notebook. The revision is entitled Application for Special Permit Landscaping Business Use, date April 5th, 2015. Now, we have a sense of the board that we're going to proceed with this as the basis of our discussion. And even though taking general comments may not be the most orderly thing to do, I think it's a fair thing to do because there are people here who may not necessarily want to sit through our discussion of the various point by points, waiting for R, which might be their specific thing. So, but let's see if people who haven't spoken before want to speak, and if there is no one, then we will hear you, Pamela Poire. Anyone have anything to say about this application that they would like to say now? Well, you're up.
Good evening. My name is Pamela Poire, 44 Forest Street. I just would like to point out that all of these plans and all of this, part of this application, were all done without any input from direct abutters. I wasn't called, I was called after the fact, after these plans were drawn, and my question was, are these, definitive plans, will they be changed? And I was told no. So at our last meeting, I'd also like to point out where they're proposing the land care yard, and I did bring some copies here. There used to be 2 greenhouses, and that was their perennial planting area. So up until a couple of years ago, that was all plantings. Yeah, I'd really like to have that back. So I don't know if you want to see these,
Sure.
what they were originally. So I've circled, well,
Do you want to hand these out? I have a copy for each board member.
as you well know, my concern is the entire commercial, industrial business, the firewood warehouse with all the 18-wheel truck deliveries and the dump truck loading and leaving, the 9 bins with the mulch,
think
the
this-
gravel, and the cobblestone. So all of the bins are located next to me, the odorous compost dumpsters are next to me, and the storage of equipment toward Forest Street is all next to me. So what you recommended, Alex, that we draw up a plan to show what other choices would be. And to be fair to, I really believe that all abutters need to be protected equally under the law. And I think this is a viable solution. So, up on the board.
Yeah, just.
Since we have it, you can put the board so that people in the, this mine?
Whatever you want to do.
So what we've done is we've moved, oops, sorry.
Yeah, just grab that mic.
Carried one like that?
So what we've done is, I don't know if you have the current plan. All of these bins,
Also, to move it so the audience can see it also. Thank you.
what's considered the land care yard, which is all the material bins, which is cobblestone, gravel, mulch. You can probably say what you had in these. So these were all located 15 feet from my property, basically. And over here was proposed storage for, I think, the plows at the end, the compost. Dumpster was here as well. So we've basically taken what you proposed for the easterly side and applied it here. And moved everything central, even distance from the butters. The compost pile, the compost dumpster moved over here. And, but I still have the firewood warehouse, basically, with all the 18-wheel deliveries. So I still have that as an impact. So the fence ended here, I believe, at 240 feet. We proposed the fence should go the entire length. So we basically moved everything central to here. Is that clear? Oh, wait.
What are the distances from the nearest residences?
Well, you can see this is about 78 feet to the fence, and I'm guessing that's another 30 feet, so maybe a little over 100 feet to the street. And it looks about even more to property lines. I think we should not discuss where homes are, because
No,
I
I
think
think we should discuss where homes are. That was my
Well-
question.
Well, let's see, it looks like to the corner here, I'm guessing 150 feet?
Well, there's a legend on there. You know, you
I
can
don't
use
have
the
I don't
legend.
have an architectural rule. So it looks like 50 feet from the bins themselves. Again, the barn, the firewood barn warehouse is only about 40 feet from my property line. And the proposed lot that I have, I think that's probably maybe 50 feet. So I'm still close to, the closest to that activity. But exact square footage, I mean, I can't tell you.
We were assured that the sound attenuation fence would effectively block all this, so, I guess what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. If sound attenuation was good enough for us, it's good enough for all the other neighbors.
What do you think?
Well, I would see what the applicant has to say about this.
Josh Oldfield, 24 Forest Street.
Why don't you find a microphone?
Josh Oldfield, 24 Forest Street. The distance from our southerly property line to the closest point on Miss Lepori's house is 200 yards.
Well, that's
Yards.
irrelevant. That's a buildable lot. I've been paying taxes on that
That's
as a
to the
buildable
house,
lot.
the closest point on the house.
Well, the town
My
meeting.
property's my property.
The town meeting did provide that the planning board was entitled to issue a special permit for landscaping, landscaping activities on a site which had experienced them before. And admittedly, landscaping is not there is noise associated with it, no question about it. And I don't think there's any way to make a plan that no one will hear any noise. I think everyone who abuts this will hear noise, but I think that what you're suggesting is putting this right really on top of the homes of two neighbors, and I'm not sure that the yard that they suggest isn't located about as well as they can, given the fact that the zoning allows it. And the zoning doesn't say that it has to be perfect. It says it has to be adequate. And I'm inclined to think that the yard where it's currently proposed is adequate.
So that's deeming my property, the lot next to me, unbuildable, Alex.
I don't believe that.
It
I don't
perks-
believe that.
it
I don't
perks-
believe it.
Would you like this in your backyard?
I have a,
Would
you know, I
anybody
have a
like this in their
landscaping business
backyard?
that is actually about the same distance from my house as
So the
yours
property
is.
values here for that I've been paying taxes on for 32 years are dropping substantially. I could no more live
The zoning
there.
provides that the zoning provides for a landscaping business use, if it can be done in a way that the planning board deems adequate. And
We're protecting the abutters, Alex. What about the abutters?
I don't think.
And why do I have to get it all? Why can't we
I
share
personally
this?
think they're giving you a lot of protection, and
By putting I have everything.
I don't believe that.
Look at it. Look at the original plan. I have it all. The compost dumpster, the warehouse with the trucks and the 18-wheel deliveries. I've got the 9 bins that 18-wheel trucks back in there on a daily basis, and the dump trucks that take it out. I have it all. And that's not fair. Under the law, that is unfair to me. It puts an undue burden on me and me alone.
Well, I've told you what my view is, but the other members of the board are going to have to be heard on this.
Well, I just wonder about this section 19.
No, actually, Mr. Johanning, if you want to speak, you raise your hand, and I had just asked for comments by other members of the board, not you. So, no, Mr.
put
Johanning,
we
if
put
you
these two
please.
together- We put these together jointly, and I want to bring up one point in the zoning bylaws of the town.
Great. Go ahead.
In order to grant a permit under Section 9C, the Board of Appeals must be satisfied that the desired relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantially derogating from the intent or purpose of the zoning bylaw. You must prove that. And I think that...
Mr. Johanning, you've read it, thank you. Now, I've asked, we discussed this at length last time, and I would like to move forward about the location of the yard. Do we have a sense that the yard where it's proposed is a location that we should initially set, knowing full well we're going to discuss the bins, we're going to discuss how the trucks come in, we're going to discuss how the yard will be used. We're just talking about the location.
Mr. White, I'd present that I don't even, that's what's before us as an application. I appreciate the effort that went in by the neighbors here, but this is not the application. I don't think we can consider this particular location as part of our purview. I appreciate the work that went into it, but the application before us, in all of its forms, has shown the land care yard where it is. So I think my perception is that that's what we should be talking about.
I agree with that. I mean, it's up to the applicant to decide. Like you keep stating, they have a right to apply for the permit under the zoning bylaws, so it's up to them to decide where they want to fix their equipment, bends, whatever, and then we decide from that point.
Well, it is, we can say we don't like the location of your yard. We can say that because that is within our,
I think
within the scope of our review.
I would say this, then I think where they've located the yard, being the applicant, it's as fair or as good a spot as any I can see happening in here.
I just want to know why we don't have the same consideration as the condominium people and the abutters and the developer. We didn't get any consideration at all in this. And I think that's important here. This is a historic neighborhood. This is a residential neighborhood. Why isn't anyone talking about the historic value like we did in the prior issue here? Everyone's ignoring that. We're talking about 18-wheel trucks daily, dump trucks daily, noise daily in our fragile, historic residential neighborhood. And I'm a taxpayer as a resident. I moved into a residential neighborhood. I have no protection here?
I think we do understand the concerns of the historic neighborhood, not least the fact that the Hillside Street is a scenic road. But as Alex pointed out earlier, town meeting has given the applicant the right to apply for this.
Yes, I understand
So
that.
I think we need to continue to review the applicant's proposal to understand whether or not the mitigation measures that they've proposed are sufficient to address the issues that everybody will clearly face. It is a landscaping business. There is noise. There absolutely is. Is what they propose sufficient? And I think one of the things that was put into the zoning that's important to remember is that the planning board can grant it for a shorter period of time. That's not in any other special permit zoning that we have. And it may be fairly or unfairly that the only way of finding some of this out is to see what happens when it's put in over a period of time. We're not at that point yet. We're not at that point of whether or not we're going to grant this, but there may be some things that we say, okay, it's worth trying, and then you come back in a year and say, no, it's not. I mean, that is an option. It did not work, in which case we would have to carefully consider whether we would re-grant it or whether we would require that some of these elements be moved even further away. That is an option. I'm not saying it's the one that we're going to choose. We may not get to that point, but we do have to continue with what we have to find out if we even agree that these mitigation measures are worth trying.
Okay, I find it really unreasonable to expect the neighbors to police these activities. And again, you know, the attenuation plan proposed on the easterly side to mitigate the exact thing I'm going to have was moved from there to here. I mean, it just doesn't make, it's not common sense to me why you would move all these problems from one abutter into another and not expect it for it to be the same problem. It's a mitigation plan because there was noise over there, and you're just moving it, a problem from one to another, just in your findings for future plans, for future recommendations. It just doesn't make sense to me, and that's why Alex's suggestion, draw up your own plan, is what we did. So we mitigated the same that they're proposing in the back, that plan, with mine, and putting it right in the middle of the property. So, for your consideration,
Thank you.
I would appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
And I wonder if we would get the same consideration when we come back in a year. Like, we propose a plan and nobody even discusses the plan. It's just that, oh, we're gonna, when I went to another town to get some help with putting together the drawing, they said to me, the planning board should be asking the applicant for this. Why are you doing this? The planning board should ask the applicant for a number of different options that could be considered. Why is it that, that you people, who are neighbors, have to come here and do an alternate plan? And I think it's a good question. I can't understand why the board would not ask for alternate plans.
Because you're asking for other changes in the language, why can't you ask for an amended plan on this as well, if you see it's not working?
Just out of curiosity, which town did you go to? If you don't mind revealing. If you don't want to say, that's fine. I was just
And
wondering.
who were these people who you talked to who said this is what the planning board should do? Were they planning board members? Were they town
No, they were engineering
administrators?
people who have a.
Or were
who
they
have-
people on the sidewalk
All
outside?
right, Alex, there were people on the street outside, but I think that the planning board has an obligation to the neighbors who they're trying to protect. That was the intent of the bylaw amendment, to protect the neighbors. That the planning board would have to look at alternate plans to ensure that all the neighbors were fairly treated.
That's all I'm asking.
We have heard the
all we're
suggestions, we
asking.
have heard the suggestions for alternate places for the yard. I actually thought about them, and I didn't think they were going to work. The fact of the matter is, back where the yard was, next to you, Mr. Johanning, is closer to these residences than where it's moved to. It's closer to residences, 3 residences, than it is to you. And admit it, it is closer.
Historically, this wasn't even part of their nursery. This was one of the lots that was acquired, Lot 1D. This historically was not part of their nursery. This was Lot 1C. Historically, this was their nursery. If we want to talk about any, like, let's say, pre-existing conditions, the pre-existing conditions would have to exist on Lot 1A. And so whatever nursery functions, can I finish? Whatever nursery functions existed on 1A.
I think it's an unreasonable plan that you suggest here, and I don't think that it's too close to the nearby residences.
So I'm being penalized because I haven't built my house yet, is that basically, I'm being penalized?
That is part of it, that is part of it.
Because I haven't,
There's no house there.
because my kids
There
are
is no
finally
house
grown.
there.
They're grown, and now it's
We are
time
going
for
to
me to
be-
build my
We
house.
are going to be discussing the mitigation. We haven't gotten there. We're just talking about the location of the yard. Then we will talk about the mitigation. But
We've talked about mitigation, and you said that a 12-foot fence was unreasonable.
we haven't talked about the fence yet.
So,
All
can
right,
you
Mr.
recommend a new
Massey,
plan?
We have,
Can I just ask one, can you?
No.
Like Emily, like you've suggested them to make changes to their application, is that something you could do to this plan at this point? Like you have to the rest of the application that they keep amending? Why couldn't they amend this?
Make changes as to the location?
Just, what you feel is not fair?
That would be part of the discussion as we go through the section that Alex had us start on last time, is the actual details that if a special permit were granted, would go into the special permit, which is why it's critical that we be able to make our way through that and determine the specifics of what's going in there. If there are things in there that the planning board feels should be in there, yes, we can ask them to add those. They may not agree, in which case that becomes a whole nother
Setbacks
discussion.
of fences, et
But we
cetera.
we can request changes to that at any point. So, can I just ask one quick question? What year did you say this was? You may not have said what year it was.
She suggested a few
I
years
don't
ago.
know. When
that's
did you
why I
take
wrote
those greenhouses down? And the perennial gardens and stuff? That
Okay.
wasn't that long ago. The perennial plantings were there not that long ago.
Okay,
down. Thank you.
all right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
both
you
of
for your time.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to mention with regards to,
Identify yourself, talk into the microphone, please.
excuse
Where is
me,
it?
Robert Mussey,
Mobile-
291 Hillside Street.
There's a mobile mic.
Robert Mussey, 291 Hillside Street, and I live right here, right on the corner of Hillside and Forest Street. And I just want to have the board understand that any sort of active movement of the yard areas impacts not only the two neighbors who have spoken so far, who live here and here, but it also impacts all the neighbors over here, which Alex has pointed out. I live here, Stephen Davis is here, Melissa Walter is here. If more of the activity is moved in our direction and farther away from here and here, then obviously the impact is greater on us. So it's obviously a slippery slope. It's an elastic formula. And what I would ask is merely that equity, a certain amount of equity in balancing distances be considered in your, as you have discussions with the applicants.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, we did segue into our discussion of E, which is landscaping and the location of the yard. So what do you think? Shall we proceed with the yard as located on the plan submitted by the applicant? Once again, this is the sense of the board. We'll get to votes down the line, because if during our discussion it appears that changes in the yard should be made, we can suggest them.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so it's the sense of the board, we're going to proceed with the yard where it is. Now, shall we discuss the fence?
Which of the two?
This
fences?
plan shall show landscaping along lot lines designed to present an attractive appearance and to help buffer noise. And shall, as necessary for buffering major sources of noise, include one or more sound buffering walls or fences appropriately sited and incorporated into an attractive setting and landscape with vegetation on both sides. And we are if you have your plan with you, we go to proposed conditions and drainage plan. And shall we start along the Forest Street, the lot line of abutting Mrs. Lepore?
I have a general question about the fence, and that is, and it was partially answered at the last meeting, but the fence is not connected So can you explain why the fences are connected?
Well, one of our fears is we have a huge deer population in our neighborhood, as well as coyotes and fisher cats. And one of my concerns is if you do end up doing a full running fence, then the wildlife will get caught and will not be able to escape. That's a major concern we have.
And they would get cut where?
They would be stuck on our
In your yard?
property,
Either
correct.
side.
There's no way for them to escape. Also, another more important reason is where we have in the back right corner is where our grow-out area is, and as I think Josh addressed it last time.
I need to have it re-explained, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that's where we have all of our tall evergreens that are probably going to be 14 and 15 and 16 feet tall. And they're all layered in a 10,000 square foot field, so they provide a natural buffer.
Just to follow up on that, obviously Pam LaFleur and John and Phil have asked for a fence along their property. The Tevens that are in the corner, have they requested a fence? Okay,
No.
so,
And the Coles do not
Coles.
want a fence.
and they do not want a fence. But the Tevens have simply not requested it, they haven't stated one way or the other.
They have a fence, Emily, sorry.
Oh, okay,
They have a
then,
stockade
all right.
fence, yeah.
We planted some evergreens on their side.
Okay,
For the,
all right.
just so we really vet this issue out, is there a way to increase the length of the fence, put a break in the fence, have the fence staggered to alleviate the issue with the animals? Did you look at did you look at that alternative? You know, obviously it's a big issue, so I'm trying to figure out ways we can satisfy
If,
both
my,
sides.
my question here is, when dealing with fences and landscaping, which is my specialty, it's always nice to have a tie-in point with an ending of a fence with a correlation to a structure. So we sort of extended the fence line to tie into the furthermost point to cover the dumpster area, and then the end point at the shop area on the side of the wood barn there. And then aesthetically, fences are extremely rigid looking, so why not enjoy the benefit of the density of tall plantings? I'm just thinking of the whole neighborhood. It's a solid wall versus a broken fence. We're probably talking approximately 200 feet to the corner. That would be,
To what ends, Brian, I'm just curious, to what ends would you like to see the fence connected?
I'm asking the question. I mean, if we can hear from an expert that that the noise impact is going to be virtually identical from the trees or the fence, then I think I'm trying to listen to the concerns about the noise and respond to it, and I'm trying to understand the reason the fence was not put in. So that's all I'm trying to understand.
the reason also is we positioned the fence in a location where she had indicated to me where her house may be down the road. So the back left corner of her property was not the ideal spot for her house because of the septic issue, even though you can build a house anywhere, as you know, and pipe it to a septic system. But she had mentioned to me that it was more towards the front of the property, so we focused our energy and efforts towards that section.
And that area back there is not really part of the landscaping business use. That is part of the nursery use. So which I know that you want it all included in one, but the activity.
As long as you don't use any of those trees in your landscaping business.
So, a lot of
Promise?
those. a lot of those, the activity is not, from the trucks and the deliveries are not happening at that back property line. That-
It's, I think what we're probably getting at to some extent is, if most of the activity's happening here, as far as the sound buffer, I mean, the sound's not gonna travel around the corner.
I hear you.
So, and I just caution the neighbors, I mean, if you're putting up 10-foot fences and you're stretching them 200, 300, 400 feet, I don't think you're gonna find that very appealing.
I just want to add, though, that there are dumpsters back there.
You have to talk into the microphone.
I just want to point out that there are dumpsters located right there now, and there will be trucks coming in and out of there. So it ending right at that point, there will still be
Well, if there are dumpsters there, the fence should certainly be extended.
extended further, yeah.
So as currently shown on the plan, the fence comes to a point that's beyond the location of the dumpster.
The truck activity goes way beyond
And
the fuel trucks and
so-
everything.
And then it is because most of the activity is here, it will be buffered by the barn itself, fence and other plantings that have been proposed here. The idea of the fence was to really contain sound and visibility of what would be happening.
So the fence, Ned, the fence lines up with the edge of the tool shop, that's
Correct.
correct?
But
Okay,
the trucks will be coming around here to fuel,
I'm wondering.
to
Oh.
empty the dumpster. This is truck activity. This is where the tool shop is. This is where, yeah, it needs to go beyond that. It's obvious.
I have some pictures that you might want to look at. This is taken from my house, where truck activity is not supposed to be, where the fence is supposed to not be because it insulates the noise.
If you look at the
Sorry,
parking
bring it up
schedule,
here.
it's a little bigger. It's a little bigger on this one.
So Josh, would it work to bring it up a bit further to maybe cover the driveway area?
Sure, that would be
And
perfect.
screen the
Yeah.
vehicles and then transition to the natural buffer area?
Yeah, I'm thinking where the nursery
Yeah,
stop line is.
That would be a
area?
perfectly
Okay.
fine spot to transition right where the evergreen started. There's a larger willow there, which would make sense to
Okay.
make that the transition point. That would be perfectly fine. And then we could sweep the bed around and sort of just tie that into a perimeter planting there.
Okay,
Great, thank you.
that'd be great.
I don't understand entirely why the buffer zone along the Lepore line can't be wider, other than the fact that there is a passageway between the fuel shed and the landscaping, and it seems to me that that just invites fuel trucks to pull up into that passageway and get filled up, and then when a big puff of smoke depart. What about that? What is that passageway for? Why is it necessary?
I thought we sort of talked about last time that we would do a planting there to narrow the opening to discourage any passage through. There has previously always been plantings there, and they were removed because we thought a forward-only traffic pattern was what we heard that the neighbors wanted. So now, after the last meeting, we heard that that's not what they want, so we will replant the plants that were previously there.
What's the width that you're thinking there?
10-foot opening,
What?
10-foot opening,
For what?
For the passageway.
yes.
We thought, because if we ever do need a fire truck to go back there, that would be a nice thing to be able to accommodate. And we do have some storage at the back end of the wood barn, so to access the storage.
Now, why, if you look along it once again, as you get down, there's this leg, this sort of unused leg of area.
Down towards Forest Street?
Down towards Forest Street. I mean, the question I have is why you couldn't provide 15 more feet of buffer along that lot line. It would cut into this space, but the space doesn't seem to be hugely, it doesn't seem to have any purpose.
That is where we store at our tables and,
No, but that's outside the 30 feet, though. No, what we're proposing in that other additional 15 feet is a grow-out area again. So it would go the property line, 3-foot drainage swath, fence 15 feet in. So now we're at 15. And then we have a planting bed on the back side of that, another 6 feet. So now we're at 20, 21. So we're not far off from the 30 feet as it stands right here. We're only talking 6 or 8 feet.
But you've only got vegetation on one side of the fence, not on
Two
the
sides of the
two
fence.
sides.
Whereas,
So,
drainage swale, fence.
And then on Lepori's property as well, we talked about spotting.
No, I don't want that, please.
Yeah.
I want all the plantings on that property.
I was going to say you need to check the zoning, because I think it says on both sides.
it does say on both sides.
There is shown some planting on the inbound.
The spruces, the Norway white and blue
Norway
spruces you're
spruces.
showing on the Lepori side of the fence.
Correct.
And then
You
there's
don't, you don't want
arborvitae's.
those.
That's my land. The fence should be moved back and plantings on both sides of the fence. Why should I give up my
we
property?
can do plantings on both sides. We just suggested on her side
The-
that she
No,
would
the
have
the
input.
spruces are on your side of the fence, but they're on your property.
Well, when Josh and Pam met, they did talk about, Josh offered up that we could plant it wherever she wanted. So if she was on her property, she could look to see where the voids are.
This drawing, proposed conditions and drainage plan doesn't show those Norway white and blue spruces on your side of the property. I know on that side of the fence.
They do.
But on your side of the property line.
They're currently shown on this plan between the fence and the property line.
Right.
Right.
So they're displayed on that, on the Lepori side of the fence, but they're planted on your property.
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
But in addition, there was
We-
discussion about whether Ms. Lepori would like to have some of those planted on her property to fill in.
So am I understanding you right, Mr. Lepore, you don't want these even on your side of the fence, even if they're on their property?
No, they're
Josh
going
and
to be
I-
on their property.
When Josh and I met, I was still insistent that they move the land care yard, and that's the only reason I said sure to that. And he had also said it was a 12-foot fence, but I have to agree with you, a 12-foot fence is horrid. And so that was that discussion, and now that's all changed now. So again, the back, the fence is 30 feet back, there's a lot of vegetation. You know, I think that would be
I
fair
just-
for me to have the same.
Just in your own benefit, to have these white and blue spruces on your side of the fence and break up this.
Oh, I
this
agree,
Large
yeah.
panel would be,
I agree, but I
Seemed to be appealing.
would think, you know, it should go on their property like it is
it
in the
is.
back, like on the back.
It's displayed on their property in
Yeah,
this plan.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, Alex, your idea of moving the fence over 30 feet would just prohibit any activity behind the barn there, and a fire truck can surely get around the other way if they need to get there.
Well,
I'm concerned with truck activity along my line again, and I think moving the fence over would alleviate that.
I think they could accomplish that by just the plantings and talk rather than move the fence in. I mean, that's just, you know.
Yeah,
Move the
So
exactly.
you have the spruces, the fence, and then plantings on your side.
Yes. And that's sort of that is what we
That was our
proposed.
original proposal,
Yes.
and then we thought we'd move it to her.
So can you indicate on the plan, Ned or Maggie, how you expect it to look different? Because that is obviously what we're all looking at, and it's not reflecting what you're talking about.
It's not, and so it's a moving target.
I understand.
A little bit, but I think,
Can I help myself understand something?
Mm-hmm.
I think the only thing you're saying differently is you're gonna put plantings in that passageway. Other than that,
And on the other
It's
side
gonna
of the
look like it
fence, all
looks
the way down.
All the way down.
Yeah, all the way down.
Yeah.
so we talked, it's not reflected on a plan, but we talked briefly last time about bringing plantings in to a line that's essentially runs perpendicular to the corner of the bin.
Right.
So the plantings would come into 50 feet
Yep, 50 feet.
with a sort of a 10-foot opening if there needed to be access back here, and then planting further into the area between we're currently shown and the back of the shed. So we'd narrow the area behind the shed. So that was discussed. It hasn't been added
Right.
specifically to a plan, but that was discussed last time, and that remains
We're willing to do that.
something that they're willing to do.
So you'd be essentially 50 feet off the property line with either with a planting slash fenced
Or any
buffer.
activity.
Planting fence,
And
planting.
you're
50
restricting
feet.
any activity from.
But
And what
but
we-
it's not the whole line. It would be a belly-out situation in the middle where the activity mostly occurs.
Okay, and then come
So
back in
basically,
as you get
Correct.
basically
Forest Street.
between,
Yes.
yeah, so that this point is approximately 50 feet. The nearest point of any of the bins is 49 feet from the edge of the property. So if you come in to that 50-foot point, you're capturing everything that it's going to contain by this corner to this corner.
But you're gonna allow yourself 10
There'll
feet
be-
on either way to
Yeah,
get
there'll be
into those
Yes.
the
areas.
ability to get
Yes.
in. But the activity with respect to what's going in and out of the material bins, all will be contained here, will be buffered here. The height of these bins, I think are proposed at 8 feet, so that they're 8-foot concrete block edges, which will creates additional sort of fence-type buffering coming this way and will contain everything in here. So the notion of adding out to 50 feet is what?
And the 8-foot fence is on top of a 1-foot berm, so the top of the fence is going to be higher than the top of the concrete.
Correct.
It's at
Correct.
9.
All right.
Is this, I just don't see the 15 feet on this plan that,
That's the location of the fence.
Located to the fence is dark hatched.
Fence is on the left side of the trees, Alex.
it's on the
Just-
left